All right. Our guy jammed a win, was a late scratch, came down with laryngitis, said he couldn't talk. And I said, fear not. I got just the guy to step into the bell cow role and put this show on his back in week 16. It's none other than Lord Reebs. This is the Block Party. I'm Pete. Let's do it.
Peter's one of the greatest depositors I've ever seen.
Trust the process. Let's go.
I got auto match with Levitan. Bullshit.
I just go the other way. In that 66, I win all the money. All the money.
If I had 150 lineups, I'd win too.
AP, coach spot bullets in your head like KD. Bust it, bitch, go bust it. And I had 10 pints with me in Russia.
Hey, everyone.
All right. It's a very festive Lord Reebs from Sharp Football joining us here today. I believe fresh off of just recording Searching for Ceiling over there with Hilo. How are you doing today, Reebs?
Listen, I'm doing all the stuff for 1 week season, apparently. We'll pick it up. Listen, I don't mind. I'm no jam to win for sure, but I'll do my best to fill in for him.
No, you are a perfect guy to slide in here, and we will not miss a beat. Definitely like one of those weird weeks where the slate or the games on for this week are just so segmented from Thursday to Saturday to Sunday to Monday. I'm already thinking about how miserable some of these sweats are going to be leading up to Monday night, where it's just this slow drip.
Just war. NFL's war on Christmas this year. When the schedule first came out, like back in I think it's like March, right? They released it in March. I can't remember. But I remember seeing the Christmas schedule and showing it to my wife, Jen, you met. And it's like, and I remember like, look at this. Christmas. The game's on Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Christmas Day, 3 games. Then back to Thursday the following week. There's no rest. Like my kids are off for Christmas break. There's just like all these NFL games. Like it's in a row. It's waged a huge war on everyone's vacation.
I know it's crazy. Yeah. I don't think it's fully set in, it's going to be Christmas morning. You're going to be trying to get some teams in. There's all kinds of contests. I thought, we just kind of gave NBA Christmas Day and the NFL said, no, we're coming for it this year.
And as a content creator, my Mondays are typically trying to just retake in everything that happened on Sunday, start to get like everything in order to rewrite up the games for the following week. And like, we've got the Christmas Day, I've got kids, we got presents. 3 whole games still to go to. That's 6 teams of information like I've got to wait on. And then it's the fantasy championships that week 7 going into week 17, which is a vital week. So I can't even really punt it.
I know it is. It blows my mind, right? Because we've memed so many of these week 16 matchups, week 17 matchups specifically. And then for them to finally be here, the infamous Jets Browns Thursday night football game, it is almost here. We've been talking about it since May.
Yeah, I think you and I don't know if that team's still alive, but we had drafted a Browns Jets stack.
Yeah, unfortunately, the team we drafted did not advance to the semis. I took a peek at it. Was definitely one of my better regular season teams, but for a single bullet where you and I got together, did pretty well. I think we'll have to run that back a few more times next year.
I think that's just a testament that in those drafts, like, we drafted that one late in the game and tried to get weird, but like,
yeah,
ADP is a construct, man. If you're trying to set out to build like a specific roster, and we tried a couple different angles that got shut down on, but like, you can be aggressive. Maybe this year was just an exception where like the first round is so volatile, but ADP is a construct. And best of all, you're trying to build the roster, get unique, man, have a good time, and sometimes those end up being your best teams.
Well, yeah. And I mean, that final show I did my last 6 or 7 drafts. Like I had one of my only Puka shares with Tom. I had my only Zach Moss share with you. Like that late information that when you draft all summer, it's hard not to get anchored to stuff and be really fluid with that. And that's why I love drafting with other smart people, because it's like, hey, this is new information. You're going to see things from a different angle than me. And to end up with a lot of natural diversification in my portfolio through smart guests, I think ended up working out really well for me.
Yeah, you love to see it, man. That was a great thing you did too, man. It's a fun way to max enter a contest.
Yeah. It's fun too. Yeah. To have, I'm doing well relative to expectation, but to be able to point back to the specific streams for these teams has been fun. So we'll see if we can get one team to the finals. I will be doing cartwheels. Speaking of which, I did write a post on my newsletter, PO Box newsletter today, because there's been, lots of complaining, frustrations about the tournament structure and not doing better in this large field lotto. So I kind of wrote up a post about some of my thoughts, resetting expectations for these big contests. That's a free post. I've dropped that newsletter every Friday. The PO Box, I'll drop a link down below as well, but definitely recommend reading that if you're feeling a little down or wondering why you didn't do better at a contest with 670,000 entries. It might provide you some solace or perspective. But Reebs, let's dive into this slate here. We are going to focus just on the Week 16 main slate, so no Saturday games, no Monday games here. I'll pull up just the game hub here from Fantasy Life so we can get a quick overview of some of these totals. Not a ton to work with from a totals perspective. We have 2 games with a total.
We're 16 weeks in. We know that one.
Yeah, exactly. We're used to it at this point. Lions at Vikings 47. And then we do have this Dolphins Cowboys game sitting at 50. What's kind of your macro overview of this slate?
Yeah, so I think we have a similar slate like we've had the past 3 weeks. And, I talked to my guy Hilo about this for the last, couple weeks. Is, we don't have it's not necessarily a team jam 'em in slate, but we have the top of the quarterback is removed. The top of the quarterback field is removed from like these high archetype, high ceiling guys. So like old school team jam in when we were doing like the Todd Gurley, David Johnson, CMC stuff. We were able to do that because we could play our 5K, 6K quarterbacks because we were able to arbitrage what was then the highest scoring quarterbacks, which were like the Drew Brees, the Peyton Mannings, the guys that were getting there through passing. That kind of got buried when we started to get like the Jalen Hurts of the world, the Josh Allens of the world. And you have these slates where you have 4 to 5 quarterbacks that have 30 to 40 point potential that you had to consider either paying up for or getting those guys because we weren't able to arbitrage what those guys could do. These last 3 weeks have been more wide open with the way the slates have been split up. And again, this slate, we really only have Justin Fields that fits that archetype. So if we only have to worry about one guy failing, that opens up the pay down quarterback method to be extremely profitable again this week. And I think that we have another slate like that again, wide open for us to be able to play the Baker Mayfields, the Flaccos, the Nick Mullins, or whoever else you like down there in those spots, because paying up for quarterback is really one guy this week again.
Yep. Yeah. And we'll talk about that when we get to quarterback here in a second. Just from a larger perspective, when we do have, these slates where there aren't a ton of, potential shootout game environments, or at least ones that are easy to identify, do you find yourself when you're building your rosters, maybe wanting to try to concentrate on the one game that does go off, overstacking it, double stack, bring back, or on these slates, do you want to be kind of really choosy in picking your spots?
Well, that's the way I play anyways. My game selection is always, more smaller field. I do try to get more games onslaughts right. That's typically the way I play. I know you used to work with Holka all the time, back in the day. Kind of a similar mindset to Holka. I'm playing even in some of these tournaments, like the 444 or something, like you've got like sub 500 entries, right? And I'm just trying to get like a game stack right and then build around it with some of the chalkier pieces on the slate. So that's typically what I do. I think we have a few of those spots again this week. I think some games stand out. One of them is definitely not Cowboys Dolphins because you cannot overstack that game. It's basically impossible on either site if you want to do that. But I mean, I think we've got like Jaguars, Bucks, Browns, Texans, Lions, Vikings. Like these are all spots that open up for overstacking on this particular slate. So those are kind of some of the ones off the top that like I definitely am interested in.
What is your take on this Cowboys Dolphins game? Obviously a very nice total, marquee players, all kinds of fantasy friendly names. And yet when you look at how well this Dolphins defense is playing, when you look at how the Cowboys offense cratered on the road in Buffalo last week, I'm like a teeny bit spooked about this having shootout potential. Like where do you fall on that spectrum?
Yeah, so if you're talking about a game like this where overstacking it's hard and players are hard to fit in, and it's the 3rd week in a row we've had a game kind of like this that is fragile. Last week, Bucks Cowboys, very similar. 2 weeks ago, Bills Chiefs, right? The similar spot, 4:00 kick, highest game total, got star power. Everyone's going to be watching it. Similar spot this week. So you either have to say like, I'm going to invest in this game environment fully, or I'm going to kind of just let it be and say like, I'm going to play that it will be a suppressed game environment. There is definitely a lot of fragility here. You talk about the Cowboys. I mean, they're 0-3 as a road underdog this season. They've been outscored by 20 points per game in those games. The Cowboys, when they fail, they know how to fail. Like they don't half step us. They go all in on their failure. Also the Dolphins, they've played 3 games against teams with a winning record this season. They've lost all 3. You talk about like the way the Dolphins defense has been playing. And I know that their schedule has been light since they've gotten Jalen Ramsey back. You know, you face the Jets twice, you face Mac Jones, you get a game against like the Commanders in there. They haven't faced quality opponents, but I do stock a lot of their defensive pieces, not just Vic Fangio, not just Jalen Ramsey, but Christian Wilkins. They got stars everywhere defensively. So I definitely think that they can throw a wrench and kind of, you know, at least slowing down the Cowboys, you know, especially if they can just throw a wrench into limiting CeeDee Lamb. That's really all you need to do to slow the Cowboys down, really. Their ancillary pieces are not guys that are going to pop for like huge games, right? Like they'll be contributors. But I mean, Brandon Cooks has gone over 70 yards one time this year. You know, I was a guy that was in on Tony Pollard this offseason, but Tony Pollard has not had these apex ceiling games where he's taking games over for 150 total yards, right? So if you can just use a guy like Jalen Ramsey, who went to Vic Fangio and asked him last week to shadow Garrett Wilson on that, you know, we'll see if he does travel into the slot. He did not travel into the slot last week with Garrett Wilson. But CeeDee Lamb's like a 50-50 player inside outside. We'll see if he travels there. So like there's a lot of vulnerability here. And when you flip the side on the Dolphin side, and you say, well, maybe the Dolphins can have a lot more success. Look what the Bills did. They just ran down the Cowboys' throats. Mike McDaniel definitely had to be watching that and saying, all right, what can I cook up? But this offensive line for Miami is still definitely a big potential issue. It's definitely not as good as the Buffalo offensive line that's been playing really well the last 7 weeks. And you look at Raheem Mostert, he got there last week from touchdown production, but it was his second lowest rate of yards before contact in a game. He only averaged 0.47 yards before contact last week. They had trouble blocking in the run game. They got the ball out of his hands fast. It worked against the Jets. You know, it's still, they're going to have to get the ball out fast against the Cowboys too. I mean, Josh Allen only had 19 dropbacks last week, and the Cowboys pressured him out 11 of them. So Tua is one of the more sensitive quarterbacks to pressure. So there is an avenue where this game definitely isn't like the bonanza that like probably like we're all hoping as game watchers to see. Also, it does have like that thin outcome. Maybe it is like Cowboys Seahawks, you know, on Thursday night a couple weeks ago. That still exists as well too. But if you do believe that exists and you want to invest in the game environment, like you're going to be penalized on this slate, because getting Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb in a lineup together, even if you want to get Waddle and CeeDee Lamb in a lineup together with one of these quarterbacks, if you run it back with a Dolphins running back or Tony Pollard, like you are extremely out of salary right when that happens.
Yep. You mentioned the stuff about kind of Dallas's struggles on the road. I kind of think about the Lions similarly in that they're a bit of front runners, right? Where it's like when things are rolling for Jared Goff, they are rolling. And when it gets bad, it gets really bad. Interception begets more interceptions. This is another spot where it's like, okay, we got road Jared Goff, but we also got dome Jared Goff here against a divisional rival. Like, where do you fall on this being a good or bad spot for the Lions?
Well, I definitely think there's fragility here if you're looking at like just what Brian Flores has done this year. He's done one of the better jobs in the NFL, but this is definitely a spot when I'm looking at a Friday when I start to, this is like kind of where I start to look at projected ownership and seeing where Jared Goff is on this slate, because the way we talked about the way people are going to build meta around this slate is play Justin Fields if they want, right? Yep. Like Justin Fields is their anchor, and then probably go down. So, and if you're not building a Dolphins, you know, like a mini stack, right? Like you're not trying to do like Dak plus CD or Tua plus your flavor of choice, Waddle or Hill, depending on Tyreek's health, that Goff's going to be skipped over. And I kind of like the upside of Goff because we look at this slate, because we were in a slimmer slate last week and he was the QB1 overall. He also was facing a defense that was on a heater in the Denver Broncos, right? Everyone was telling you the Broncos had turned this around. They're righted the ship. Goff throws 5 touchdowns against him. He's the QB1 on the slate. I definitely also believe that exists in his range of outcomes. And if he's going to be sub 5% owned, you can build around him on the slate where you can get him Amon-Ra plus maybe a Justin Jefferson as a bring back. And it is a little more costly side, but that ceiling outcome on this particular slate, I definitely think is worth investing into as you want to enter the larger field. We saw Jake Browning in the second half of the game last week against the Vikings really start to work with efficiency. Completed 20 of 27 passes, 9 yards per pass attempt in the second half of that game. I definitely think Ben Johnson and Jared Goff are able to cook up some stuff too and have success, especially when you look at the Vikings structurally. They do play a lot of cover 3. It's their second highest coverage usage in the NFL. And Jared Goff, only CJ Stroud and Brock Purdy have a higher rating than Jared Goff against cover 3 this season. Amon-Ra St. Brown leads the NFL in receiving yards against cover 3 this season. So I want to play on the upside angle of this. If Jared Goff's going to be sub 5%, I can add him with Amon-Ra. I can have Justin Jefferson. That's probably a unique build on the slate. Not a lot of gamers are probably going to start that route. And as field gets larger, I want to attack that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and we'll get to Jefferson when we get to wide receiver. I think he'll be fairly popular, but not with those two for sure. Let's use this to transition to quarterback, and let's kind of circle back to the Justin Fields combo. JM had initially asked me to make him the cover boy here. I was reading Karane's walkthrough this morning. He's the cover boy there. Justin Fields is not going to be sneaky. He's going to be overwhelmingly popular. I've been doing the Battle Royale drafts. He goes in the first round of those. Talk about just this spot for Justin Fields, and then maybe in conjunction to at what point does the ownership make you queasy playing him?
I think it just depends what you're playing. Obviously, he's going to be the most popular quarterback in small field and cash stuff because he's the archetype, right? We talked about he's the only guy that literally checks the archetype box, the archetypical box of dual threat quarterback. Even if you like Tua and Dak ceilings, those aren't guys that are running. Like you're not getting you're not threatening to get double-digit rushing points in a game. I do think this is an interesting spot to maybe go in under though and play through the angle of saying if Fields has let's say he has 22 points, right? Maybe even 24. I don't think that's really going to bury you on this particular slate, especially if he's going to be the most popular guy. What the situation is you look at Justin Fields where he really excels is in the quick game. When teams rush him, people probably maybe think it's counterintuitive, but Justin Fields is awesome against the blitz and he's awesome against man coverage because he's able to just kind of play football, right? You get kind of Justin Fields processing at a quick rate. He's just playing football. When Justin Fields has to drop back, read defenses, that's when he starts to have trouble. And Jonathan Gannon, this is what they do. The Arizona is completely passive defense. They blitz at the lowest rate in the NFL. They don't pressure the quarterback. They play man coverage at the lowest rate in the NFL. So there is an avenue here where this, Justin Fields gets capped. He also can get capped just through game script in this game. This is the first time in Justin Fields' career he's been a favorite of more than a field goal. What if the Bears just control this game? We've attacked this Arizona run defense this whole season. For DFS, we probably can't do that here because we have this three-headed triumvirate with Roshan and Deontay Foreman and Khalil Herbert. But what if the Bears are just up and they're just running the ball down the Cardinals' throats? That exists in this range of outcomes too. So in tournaments, I do think that he probably has lower probability for a 30-point game than probably the field believes he does with projected ownership.
Yeah, I agree with that. He is by far the click that feels the best. And so then that steam happens to where it probably ends up disproportionate to his actual odds of hitting there. I'm actually surprised. I pulled up ETR's early run at ownership and they have Nick Mullins as the highest projected owned guy. I will bet on Justin Fields being higher owned than Nick Mullins if there was a market that allowed me to do so. But what do you think about this spot? I assume Mullins is one of the guys you're talking about that's viable from a punt option at 5,300.
Yeah, it's wide open. I mean, you look at the way the Lions have played coverage this year, definitely fits Nick Mullins being successful. And that's kind of where we are this week again. I joked with Daigle on the Wednesday show and he was talking about he wanted to see if Trevor Lawrence would play in the game. I was I don't even care if Beathard plays because that's these guys have all been viable. The Flaccos, the Mullins of the world, when these guys have these good matchups. So definitely where he's priced, I think Mullins definitely fits a lot of builds. He's a guy I definitely want to see projected ownership on, though. I'm definitely not going to go down the rabbit hole of if everyone's playing Nick Mullins, I'm going to be playing Nick Mullins. There are a couple guys I do like him, a little more than him, guys like Baker. I think Baker's in a really good spot. We're waiting again to see what Beathard opens up or if we get Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence was practicing today. It could be a Brock Purdy situation, right? Everyone thought Brock Purdy was dead that week going into the Bengals game. There was no chance he was going to play. Lawrence, we put this dude in the grave a few times this year where we thought we were getting that CJ Beathard start and Lawrence ends up playing. I'm not going to say that there's no chance he plays. If he plays, that game obviously becomes even more fun, but Beathard is so cheap on both sites and it's such a favorable matchup. He obviously gets you access to more. I think Flacco is a little more appealing than Mullins too.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause the Texans have been pretty decent against the run, right? You throw on the Texans.
Yeah, they're great against the run. It's been consistent. That's what I think makes Baker so good too, right? The Jaguars have consistently been good against the run all year. And that's been like something locked and true, but since their bye, they've been absolutely flooded in the pass game. They haven't stopped anyone through the air, and they've turned into like kind of like the Titans of last year, where like they've become like a dominant funnel. And the Texans are the same way. Listen, D Hember got shut down. Like with D Hember real quickly became not a thing in a week. And that's what the Texans do. And the Browns, we want to avoid this backfield anyways, because it's stupid. Like Jerome Ford's getting all these empty calorie touches, and Kareem Hunt is getting like all the goal line work, but Kareem Hunt has had over 50 yards in 2 games this year. Like, it's a dumb backfield. We want to annoy it. So Flacco doubles. Me and Hilo were playing with this.
Yeah.
You could Flacco plus Amari plus David Njoku plus Devin Singletary as an inherent bring back is less than 50% of your salary on both sides.
Wow.
It is very rare you can get a correlated game stack with a quarterback that is fewer than 50% of your salary on both sides. And that allows you to get access to some cheaper options where you're talking about these small field onslaughts. If you get that game environment right, you're really cooking, man.
Yeah, I like that call out a lot. Why we're kind of getting in the weeds about how you would attack these cheaper quarterbacks. The Baker one is interesting, right? Because Rachaad White's going to be popular, and you can run on the Jags a bit too. And I don't think, based on price, like people are going to be getting the Baker premium doubles. Like how would be your preferred way to stack Baker? Would it be with Rachaad White and one of the pass catchers, or would you potentially not use Rachaad White?
So this is one of the rare instances where you could actually run a stack with the running back, where we talked about this last week, where Brock Purdy can be stacked with Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
This is a similar spot because you look at the Jaguars, they're only allowing 9.8 rushing points per game to opposing backfields, 8th in the league. They're 7th in yards per carry allowed to running backs, but they have allowed the highest rate of receptions to running backs in the NFL. 28% of all catches against the Jaguars have gone to running backs. They're allowing 11.8 PPR points per game to opposing backfields. Obviously, White's hot stretch, when you look at him over his past 9 games, he leads all running backs in receiving yards. He's 3rd in receptions, and he has 3 receiving touchdowns. So he can be played in Baker stacks too. On this slate, especially on DraftKings, more so than FanDuel. So there's a way to kind of get unique. If you're playing Rachaad White, you just play him with Baker, right? Or if you're playing Baker, you play Rachaad White, and then you can pick out Evans and Godwin. The great thing about the Bucks is we know where the ball's going. The ball goes to those 3 players. That's really it. Like we don't have to worry about it like the Cade Ottens of the world. Like obviously he had that one week against the Texans where he popped up. Like no one's getting like regular targets in this offense. So we know where the ball's going. That's what makes the Bucks inherently one of my favorite teams every week to target for onslaughts, because they have a thin target tree. They're also good against the run and can't stop the pass. So they're always fun every week to stack.
One other quarterback I want to ask you about before we move on to running back, and mainly through the lens of, Trey McBride, grown-ass man, going to be the most popular tight end on this slate. And yet I don't think a lot of people are going to stack him with Kyler Murray. What is your thought on Kyler in this spot at Chicago?
Yeah, it's real tough, I think, because it's tough to paint like the upside picture. I mean, you look at the Bears, this team has been a really good defense. Like they just honestly have, like the entire back half of the year, they've been good. And you look at Kyler, this is a game where he doesn't offer like the dual access package, right? Like he could get a rushing touchdown, but like the weeks he's had a rushing touchdown since his return, he's operated as like a back end QB1 for fantasy. Like there's been no spike weeks. And it's because he's a shitty passer, man. Like, I mean, he's averaging where he's is for passing points per pass attempt is right below Kenny Pickett and right above Bailey Zappi. That's like the context of where he's been as a passer. Since his return, he's 19th in completion rate, 25th in yards per pass attempts. He got four passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions. On throws further than 10 yards downfield, he's completed 38% of his passes. He's 21 of 55. And what has really hurt him is their wide receivers are just not good right now. Obviously Hollywood Brown's ruled out. He hasn't been able to play with the heel injury. He's been a non-factor. Then you've got guys, their ancillary wide receivers just aren't good. He's worked 2 games with Michael Wilson. You got Greg Dortch, who's like everyone's kind of like favorite hero play. And then Rondale Moore. It's just not a good receiving unit. Since he's returned, these targeted wide receivers on just 47% of his passes. Only Desmond Ridder has targeted his wide receivers at a lower rate than Kyler Murray. And that's why you see Trey McBride. The dude has a 30% team target share since week 8. Like, he's like hard to fade because he's getting Travis Kelce usage. I actually think he's still underpriced, even for where his price has gone. because he also has a great matchup. The Bears can't slow tight ends down. They haven't slowed tight ends down all year. They're kind of one of their vulnerable points is the middle of the field. They play a ton of cover 2, and they're good against running backs. So I mean, Trey McBride is just an inherent bring back if you're running the most obvious stack in the world, Fields plus DJ Moore. You brought it back with Trey McBride, and you've got your isolated bring back.
Shout out to everyone hanging out in the chat. Sammy spreading some Christmas cheer here. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you, Sammy. We got my guy Tyler, always the little drummer boy for likes here, drumming up the likes. 256 watching. Don't forget to like. It helps giving season indeed. Thank you guys. Hit the like button. I do this show every Friday at 2 p.m. normally with Jam to Win. He came down with laryngitis, and Lord Reebs stepping up, putting the show on his back. Let's talk some running back plays here. Kind of looking at, projected ownership. It does seem like Rachaad White's going to be very popular. Interesting slate for running backs in that we don't have a ton of high-end options. Rachaad White is the most expensive running back on the slate at 7,400. We have some interesting, value guys this week with the Ty Chandler stuff, although Alexander Mattison back at practice today, so we'll see how that goes. And then you got some other kind of injury-related spots. Jonathan Taylor coming back potentially here. So tell me, what is your kind of overview of the running back position this week? Because it looks pretty wide open to me.
Yeah, this is what makes this slate particularly fun for me, is that running back is wide open. Because typically on a slate like this, like last week, it was like we can pay down at quarterback, we can get the CMC, we can get the Kyron Williams, right? Like there was a clear path to that last week. This week, who do you want to pay up for? Like, who are you excited to play? Like out of those guys, we talked about Rachaad White, solid player. Maybe not like a great ceiling matchup on the ground, but definitely stands out. I mean, we're in a world where Rachaad White's the highest price right back at slate. Like that's where we are. That tells you everything we need to know. So it is more of a value-based slate. We do have more when we get to wide receivers like to pay up for that opens up. But yeah, I think this is a great just balanced approach. Like we've got a lot of solid running backs that are value plays, and you can play 2 to 3 of these guys and kind of open things up. Obviously, Ty Chandler, I actually hope Madison doesn't play because he's a dude I outright want to fade. So I want him to be popular.
Explain that. He had the huge game last week. Obviously, you think he's fragile. What are the holes there?
Yeah, so obviously from a volume perspective, if you're playing cash and small field, you could see how you can get there. You had 96% of the backfield touches. You just take those touches, you throw him at the wall, and you say, go ahead. But as field size increases, he would be a guy I would absolutely want to avoid here for multiple reasons. One would be just kind of the top-down look of the Vikings offense, right? So we have 2-game sample where the Vikings have run the ball well this year. They've come against Denver Broncos and the Cincinnati Bengals after DJ Reader got hurt. 2 spots we've targeted with everybody. Everybody has run on those 2 teams. We have not seen the Minnesota Vikings successfully run the football on a team that they shouldn't be running the football against. And that's kind of what we have here. I mean, the Lions are 3rd in the NFL in yards per carry allowed to running backs. They're 7th in rushing points allowed per game to running backs. They're also 7th in receiving points allowed per game to running backs. This is a team that has stymied running back play the entire season. Also, we have 2 great pivots at Ty Chandler's price points. We have Chuba Hubbard at 5,700, who looks like a really great play. And then we have Devin Singletary right below him. Two guys that I believe are just better plays. So, I mean, if we're going to get him at a really 20% popularity, 20% ownership, I gladly, as field size increases, want to play those other 2 players.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I will say too, this, the idea of being, contest specific, I'm going to talk about this underdog slate with the Badge Bros on their channel immediately following this show at 3. I wrote up Ty Chandler as one of my favorite plays over there, but that's because he's not getting drafted in those contests. You're going to get him at 5% ownership in an underdog contest, whereas here he's going to be the most popular running back, on the slate, well over 30% in small field. So if you want to get your Ty Chandler love, you can do it on underdog without all of your friends joining you. What do you think about the 2 running backs in the Arthur Smith Gardner Minshew Bowl this week, Bijan Robinson and JT, because they're going to catch some interest?
Yeah, just by process, I think of just the field, right? Jonathan Taylor comes back. It's going to be an interesting spot for him. The Falcons they're the only team in the NFL still have not a lot of rushing touchdown to a running back this season. So, is there a huge ceiling for that? I think that game is sneaky. It could go up, have some upside to go over the game total too as well. But if Zach Moss isn't going to play, then it gives Jonathan Taylor that kind of that path to catch more passes. I mean, he's got a hand injury, right? Typically running backs coming back from injuries, I'm more cautious on, but not like he doesn't have like a hamstring or like a quad or something. So like I'm not like concerned about like Jonathan Taylor where he is like a risk of re-injury, it's just literally like ball control stuff. Like if he has to play with like anything on his hand, does he lose a fumble or something? That's the stuff we don't, whatever. So he does draw, I think, a lot of interest. The Colts have been playing well too. I mean, they are 5-1 their past 6 games. Literally the one week where I went like hard and like bet them was the Bengals game. They got flooded. Like, thanks a lot for that. But looks like Michael Pittman's going to play in that game too. It would have been a lot more of a better signal for Jonathan Taylor if we wouldn't have had Michael Pittman.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's going to be in there. We got the Bijan, Lucy with the football, thing again, right? Like, Arthur Smith. The thing about Bijan is I just don't know. Like, he doesn't scare me because I don't know. Like, we've seen him one game this year possess like tournament winning upside.
Yeah.
Because even if Arthur Smith is like, all right, I am going to give him red zone touches. I am going to use Bijan Robinson this game. What does using Bijan Robinson entail? He's had one game this season where he's had over 60% of the backfield touches. Like, does using him mean he's going to get 55 to 60%? He gets red zone work. He catches some passes against this Colts defense, which we like. But am I scared of Bijan like getting to 25 to 30 PPR points? And honestly, what evidence do we have of that happening?
I know. Yeah, it is. It's one of those things where the name brand and us anchored to Bijan as this incredible prospect, this first round pick, I think we have a hard time letting it go. And we all keep thinking it's that assumption of rational coaching, even though we've seen Arthur Smith be the most irrational coach in the league. So I'm with you on that. Let's talk about the running backs in that Dolphins Cowboys game. I don't think anyone's going to catch a ton of ownership there. Maybe Pollard gets a little bit of love. I've seen some stuff circulating. There was a quote talking about he wasn't fully healthy at the beginning of the season. So that narrative's kind of picking up of like, oh, we can make this excuse for how Pollard was playing earlier. Any thoughts on either the Miami running backs or Pollard in this spot?
I'd still be more interested in taking shots on the Miami side. I mean, obviously you can look and say, hey, look what Buffalo did last week. Is there success to be had, especially on the edges of this Cowboys defense with this, Shanahan scheme and with guys that can get on the edge with Raheem Mostert and Devin Achane. Achane is the guy that most resembles, like if Mike McDaniel is really trying to cook up some stuff in the lab of like what James Cook brought to the table last week, Achane would be that guy. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, we saw him play a lot of like actual wide receiver against the Titans on that Monday night game. He had like a 75-yard touchdown where he cooked his guy on a double move and Tua just overthrew him. So is there a chance for Achane to be used like in the passing, especially with Tyreek, right? Because we don't know. We're going to be flying blind on like, we think Tyreek Hill's going to play. Tyreek openly came out and said like he doesn't know like about his cutting ability. Like that's always a great sign, but like
no.
So like what if Tyreek's going to be at half mast or 75 to 80%, like is Achane a guy that can get involved in the passing game? And I think so. So he becomes pretty interesting, I think, out of the Dolphins backfield. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you to fade anyone that has 20 touchdowns on the season. So if you want to play Raheem Mostert for the touchdown equity he has, like by all means, you have to pay for both these guys though, is the one kind of rub.
Yeah, Tyler pointing out, I just saw this. I think Coach Speak Index flagged this. McDaniels was talking about Achane's workload. He said, we've had some time to take extra precautions with his workload the last 2 weeks, no setbacks, and he's doing well. Hopefully he'll be able to get even more reps as the coming weeks come. So maybe a little stock up arrow on Achane's usage. Trying to think any other names we should hit. I guess I don't have a good feel. Like you open up the app, you put in your Joe Flacco double stack, and then you go to put a running back in. Like who's the first click for Lord Reebs this week?
I mean, I think you can play Devin Singletary as that bring back, especially where he's priced. So Devin Singletary, I know they played in overtime last week, but he had 30 touches again last week. He's the only running back this season to have multiple games with 30 touches. This Browns defense is a very all or nothing run defense. I mean, they're number 1 in the NFL in yards allowed before contact per carry. They're number 32 in yards allowed after contact before carry. If they're going to give up runs, they're going to be explosives. And we know that Bobby Slowick with Case Keenum is going to involve Devin Singletary. So I think at his price point, he's very well adequately priced. I mean, I brought up Chuba Hubbard as well. If Alexander Madison ends up playing and pushes ownership to Chuba Hubbard, I would be very pissed off about this. Only Kyron Williams has more touches than Chuba Hubbard over the past month of football. The Packers, over their past 6 games, allowed 5.1 yards per carry. They're 30th in the NFL. They've allowed a league-high 6 rushing touchdowns to running backs and a receiving touchdown. They've allowed 5 RB1 scoring weeks. And listen to some of these guys. Najee Harris, Jalen Warren in the same game, Isaiah Pacheco, Saquon Barkley, Rashad White. Like, these aren't world beaters like that are like crushing them. So Chuba Hubbard, definitely a guy that I'm interested in. If we don't get A.J. Dillon, I think Aaron Jones could be potentially interested in that game. We saw the Packers are always like a precautionary team. Like if this goes back, like they are one of the medical staffs that really slow play a lot of injuries. You're seeing it with Christian Watson again. Aaron Jones comes back. He only plays 48% of the snaps, but he does get 17 touches on those snaps. So he's going to get ramped up, and he's going to get to like the 65% snap share, and that 17 touches can turn into 20 touches. He becomes interesting against this game that's going to be really ugly. It's going to be an ugly fantasy game, but there's going to be a lot of running in this game.
Yeah. Let's move on to wide receivers so we leave ourselves enough time here to build a lineup, talk a little tight ends here. We mentioned Justin Jefferson earlier. He, if you trust that he's fully back and you feel fine with Nick Mullins, he's definitely mispriced at 8,100. Looks like we're getting good news on Michael Pittman, who was in the concussion protocol, but has been practicing. And then the slate does really open up. I think DJ Moore will obviously catch a ton of steam, just being the logical stacking partner with Fields. But what else are you seeing from this wide receiver slate? Because we don't have like the slam dunk play on either the high end or the cheap end that just everyone wants to play. Not even like a Jaden Reed from last week where that click felt so comfy.
Yeah, that's why I think this slate is super fun, man. It's either going to be a week where, I definitely win no money or all the money, because it's wide open. Everyone's going to have different lineups this week. That's what's great.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't get enough of these slates, right? And we wouldn't have had it if some of these Christmas Day games were on this main slate. Justin Jefferson looks particularly appealing in terms of like small field cash gamey type stuff, because we know the targets are going to be there. Came back to 10 targets. The question you have is the same question we've had with all of these guys that have played at backup quarterbacks, right? It's been the year of this. Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams. Like, does he possess that ceiling? Are we going to have a game where he can get multiple touchdowns? The matchup is there for it. I mean, Detroit's allowed 19.1 PPR points per game to opposing wide receiver ones this season, where you want to attack them is outside and on the boundary. So the matchup does line up as well. I like playing him and Amon-Ra together with Goff. I like that idea of building a stack like that as field size increases. And I love all the guys in that Jacksonville game. There's not a receiver in that Jacksonville game I don't think I do that could be put off of. Maybe you say like Beathard, but like Beathard at least is a guy that's like experienced. Like, it's not like an Aiden O'Connell situation, right? Or an Easton Stick situation. Like, CJ Beathard's going to be able to get the football to these guys, at least in a capacity where it's viable. And all these guys are cheap. Just say like the Baker side's safer to play, right? But we have Mike Evans. We know he's got all that touchdown equity. He's got 11 touchdowns. Only CeeDee Lamb has more end zone targets than Mike Evans. Chris Godwin has back-to-back games with double-digit targets. He runs into another great matchup because the Jaguars play zone at the 5th highest rate in the league, and his zone man splits are phenomenal this year. 2 yards per route run, 25% target share against man, 1.2 yards per route run, 18.9% target share against man coverage. So we like the matchup for him. And then no one loves to click the button on Calvin Ridley, but this dude is getting insane usage, and now we take Zay Jones off the board against the team that has struggled to defend outside wide receivers the entire season. Tampa Bay is 28th in points allowed per game to opposing wide receiver ones. They're 23rd in yards per target to opposing wide receivers, allowing the most receiving yards per game to wide receiver ones. If you want to pay down for Parker Washington, you can even get there. They've been terrible in slot receivers. And then also Evan Engram is great in this game. I know we're not talking about tight ends yet, but like he's such a great pivot off of Njoku and Trey McBride this week, and he's got such a great matchup. So I love all the receivers in that game as well.
One game we haven't talked about with quarterback or anything yet would be that Seattle-Tennessee game. Looks like we're going to get Ryan Tannehill, but a little bit of interest in maybe some of the Seattle wide receivers. Also, DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is probably a little too cheap for his role. Any love for the wide receivers in this game?
Yeah, definitely DeKalin stands out as a pretty good, he's a guy that's Geno Smith. He's been targeted on 24% of his routes with Geno in the game. Drew Lock only targeted DK 15% of his routes. He had a lot more wider spread of targets. And then we're getting him in this great matchup. Again, Titans are another like outside boundary wide receiver funnel. So DK definitely, if you look at his last 4 games too at Geno, one dud in there, but he's gone over 90 yards with 4 touchdowns over that span. So he's a guy that's kind of been like really good. And he fits that balanced build approach too, right? That we've talked about. I really think that it is a slate where you can do like a lot of just mid-tier pricing guys at running back and wide receiver. And you have a chance those guys where they have high medians and high ceilings, right? And you could really run into a week where like you build a really good lineup. I also think Garrett Wilson is a guy not to be ignored on this slate. Especially where he's priced on both sites, particularly DraftKings, because he's in a nebulous price zone where like I just think from like a meta perspective, like people aren't going to be playing wide receivers in that range because they're going to be playing a tight end in that price range this week. So definitely don't ignore Garrett Wilson. Trevor Siemian's going to play. He did target Garrett Wilson on half of his routes. It's a way better matchup. We only have 3 weeks left to play guys against the Commanders. You know, we didn't talk about Breece Hall at the running backs, but like these 2 Jets guys are in play. Don't overlook these Jets guys for sure this week.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I was about to use you bringing up Garrett Wilson to circle back to Breece Hall. And I was going to ask you if you had a flex spot and everything else was equal, the price, the ownership, which one of those 2 guys would you rather play? Take out any other correlation angles or whatever.
I would rather play Garrett Wilson on DraftKings and Breece Hall on FanDuel.
Okay. But which that answer says they're both very much in play. It's not like one.
I think you can put these guys in the same lineup.
Okay. And I assume this is a take or a testament of the Commanders' defense more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, dude, this, again, every week, man, just been circling every week. My favorite stat of the season, and we'll see. You know, obviously it's Trevor Siemian. I'm not telling him that you have to play Trevor Siemian, even though I recommended Joe Flacco. We talked about Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard, and all these guys. But the Commanders, since the season opener, have allowed every single quarterback they have faced to score more fantasy points than that player at average coming into that game. They absolutely have been flooded by wide receiver ones. They're allowing a league high 21.8 PPR points per game to opposing wide receiver ones. They've allowed the most touchdowns in the NFL this season from outside the red zone. And it's like dumb shit like last week. Like you see Cooper Kupp, right? It's just like blown assignments, like where like he's wide open. They've allowed the most yards per catch to opposing wide receivers, the highest touchdown rate to opposing wide receivers, the most yards per target to wide receivers. And then when you look at the running back position, they've allowed an RB1 score in 6 straight games. Here are those guys: Ramondre Stevenson, Kenneth Walker, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, Devin Achane, and then Kyren Williams last week. Like, again, not exactly a daunting rogues gallery of guys like flooding them with fantasy points. So that's I think you can actually, when you think like the Jets offense, where the ball goes, this is why I think you can play them 2 guys together in the same lineup.
Which, and if you would have done that 2 weeks ago in that game against the Texans, you know, where Breece Hall went, I just pulled it up, 8 for 86 and 1, and Garrett Wilson went 9 for 108. I mean, you are very happy with the return on fantasy points for salary there. What about in the like true punt range? I mean, you mentioned Parker Washington earlier. I'm trying to see who even is going to be popular. It looks like, you know, some people are going to want to play Jonathan Mingo again. I don't know if I have a stomach for that click. But anything else down here like sub 4,200 that interests you?
Yeah, I mean, you think you have to, on this slate in particular, explore Jameson Williams. Coming off a career-high 7 targets, he ran more routes than Josh Reynolds for the first time this season. Had some stuff designed for him. We've seen, like, he's been ramped up, right? He came back from the suspension. He's getting there. He's being involved in offense. If I recommended, like, being in on some Goff stuff, how do we add? How do we get to playing both Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown? We've got a little double we can add to it, you know, real cheap.
Yeah. I like that. I'm trying to think, you know, I guess if you were trying to find unique ways to do Justin Fields stuff, would you entertain like a Darnell Mooney punt there?
I mean, it literally, I have no objective rationale for it except for Cardinals. But yeah, sure. Like so Fields is just going to drop, like whatever you think DJ Moore's ownership is going to be, it's going to be higher than what it's projecting for because
guaranteed.
Because quarterback play, whenever gamers click a quarterback, they want to play him with a pass catcher.
Yep.
So it's going to come in higher than you think because Fields is going to be the most popular quarterback. So DJ Moore's rostership is going to be a lot higher than even what it's projecting as.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I'm trying to
think.
Always
happens.
I'm trying to think. We've hit on a lot of these spots. We talked about the Browns wide receivers. We talked about it being a little tricky. What about like on the high end? Would you find yourself to trying to play a CeeDee Lamb alpha game, a Tyreek Hill alpha game if he goes? Anything there?
I mean, you can always play those guys. Like I said,
Yeah.
I'm more or less probably, if I'm going to play that game, it would be more of a one-off situation probably. Or like if I would do like CD Lamb plus Achane or something, or Mostert, something like that. Even that's costly because I don't know if either of those guys, and they obviously could get there, but with just like the game environment and the matchup, we talked about Ramsey. Does he cover him? Like, is that game in the low 20s instead of maybe the 30s?
Yeah.
For those guys at their salaries to like bury you, like they have to have like real heaters, man. Like we're talking CeeDee Lamb. They both have to like CeeDee Lamb and RLS have double-digit receptions plus 2 touchdowns. And even like Tyreek, even if he catches one long ball, like I don't know if I'm necessarily scared of him like shadow realming me this week.
Right. Yeah. And my guess is the field's going to kind of feel similarly. The price tag. It is just interesting that game has the highest total on the slate. And I don't think either of those guys are going to catch too much interest. Any other final wide receivers that we haven't hit on before we briefly touch on tight end?
No. Like I said, the only other guy I would say is Amari Cooper, right? Like, inherently to bring back with Flacco, but Flacco doubles. But his inaccurate target rate, it's not just the target share at Flacco, it's the quality of targets. He only 14.8% of his targets from Flacco have been inaccurate. With PJ Walker, it was 21.4%, and from Dorian Thompson-Robinson, it was 26.3%. So like big difference in terms of quality of targets.
How about here? We'll hit one more here from our guy, Historical Anomalies, in the chat. Traylon Burks rising from the ashes. No Nick Westbrook-Akine. The laugh indicates that he's not in your player pool.
I'm not going to yuck anyone's yum punting at why. Like if you have a punt play in large field tournament, I will never yuck your yum. Like
especially if it's not popular.
You just need to catch one touchdown, man.
Yep. A more serious question from Pete Overbet, no relation to me. How do we explain to our families that we won't be hanging out with them on Xmas because there's there it is in the fantasy lofts?
Because we have to pay for Christmas. That's what you tell them.
There you go. Yeah. How do you pay for all these presents under the tree without banking it on the showdown slate? All right. We are going to transition. We'll touch on a tight end real quickly, and then we will build a lineup on DraftKings. Also want to mention JM is not here, but they did change the promo code for over at 1 week season. They're up to 90% off. I think they are going to pay you to join by the end of the season at this rate. But if you want to use promo code Pete90, you can get 90% off. And Reebs, I want you to give a plug here for what you got going on at Sharp Football. I personally do not play a single showdown slate or main slates without reading your worksheet breakdowns. They need to be checking that out. Anything else they should know about over on Sharp Football?
Now the guys are obviously no one's buying 3-week fantasy subs for the end of the season at this point, but the guys are ramping up for like the playoff content. My worksheets will be part of that. And I mean, listen, Warren's he's been an absolute banger this season. Absolute heater, by far having like the most profitable season that I've seen like a person like that gives out picks. So if you want to follow that, check that out. But always the worksheets, we always do a couple free ones too, and they always are those the Monday night and Sunday night games. So if you are building shutout lineups, they're just free for everybody.
Beautiful. Yeah. Those are great primers. I read those yesterday. We built our pick'ems for the Shipcast. We hit our core entry on that game yesterday. So yeah, always good to get that bedrock of info before you start, blasting off in these drafts and on pick'ems. Let's talk about tight end here. We don't have to talk a lot about Trey McBride. It is what it is. He's underpriced. He's awesome. And he is going to be a very logical bring back to your DJ Moore, Justin Field stacks. You mentioned Evan Engram, having some interest in him. David Njoku. I mean, these guys have been absolutely red hot of late. Those guys, it looks like will be, the most popular, or at least projecting for the most points. Anything else jump out to you at tight end?
Hey, those are the guys that primarily stand out, especially if Beathard plays. I just, especially it's an aggressive Todd Bowles defense. It's blitzing at the third highest rate, like really could signal a lot. It's Nose Jones, like, man, Evan Engram could be a really nice pivot this week because I think Njoku's going to probably be a little more popular than him. I will say if you're looking for like a deeper play, if you want to be burned one more time, Kyle Pitts does have some signal this week.
Okay. So, I mean, I would say sell me on Kyle Pitts. It's going to be an easy sell, but go for it.
I mean, you just look at, the Indianapolis Colts play cover 3 at the league's highest rate. Like we know Gus Bradley's going to do. They play cover 3, 57% of their passing snaps, highest rate in the NFL. They don't come out of it. It's why they don't give up a lot of production to like wide receivers on the outside. Kyle Pitts leads the team with 21.2% of team targets. He's been targeting 24% of his routes against cover 3. Obviously, we know Lucy with the football can pull this on us. But on this type of slate, I do think he does present some intrigue where he's priced because he is kind of like almost a true pay down option this week where we don't have those clear pay down guys. You can play Tucker Kraft again if you want because he's on the field every snap. The Panthers are a sneaky solid defense. Like, I don't think people like quite realize like they are a pretty solid defense and they've been that way. And the thing that sucks about the Panthers, they play good defense and they're never ahead. So teams just kind of like ramrod the run against them the entire time, which is kind of frustrating. But we don't have those guys because this isn't a week where it's like Chig or Tucker Kraft. We have money to play with. So people are getting in Njoku. They're getting in Trey McBride. They're getting in. I think you can play two of these guys. I think you can play two because on DraftKings particularly, FanDuel, it's a little thinner. And the reason I say that is because if you look where Njoku, Evan Engram, and Trey McBride are priced, and then you compare that to wide receiver, do you want to play Drake London? Do you want to play Noah Brown? Do you want to play Romeo Dobbs? Do you want to play Josh Downs? Do you want to play Tyler Lockett? Do you want to play Terry McLaurin? I don't play any of those guys.
No.
I don't play any of those guys.
And the math backs you up on this, and this has been the meta all year, but I just ran some optimals before the show, and the top one, Chig and Cole Kmet, Trey McBride and Cole Kmet, Chig and Evan Engram, so like all Chig and Trey McBride, like these mixing and matching of tight ends, like the tight ends just flat out end up projecting better than the comparable wide receivers in their price range.
We're talking not tight ends that are priced that range for in terms of just like in context of tight end. Like we're talking like raw target share usage in their offense compared to the wide receivers at the same pricing. David Njoku over not just his Flacco games, his past 9 games is 25% of the team targets. Like what wide receiver did I just name that is getting 25% of his team's targets, right? Like Drake London, those is by default by volume, right? Like by proxy if they're throwing 25 passes. Same thing with Evan Engram, with Zay Jones, right? Like, so it's not just the thing or getting over like the mental hurdle of playing 2 tight ends. These are guys that are being used at a higher rate than those wide receivers.
Yep. All right. It's time to build a lineup. Let's go. All right, we got the usual Deposit Kingdom weekly league here up. Looks like we're at 311 of 375. Devastatingly, we had to lower the entries from 420 to 375 after last week's did not fill. Let's get this one filled here, and then maybe we can get it back up to the very chill, hella dank 420 entries. Reebs, what I always do here is I toss it to JM to start with a stack, a block. I mean, this is a choose your own adventure. Wherever you want to take us with this lineup, this blank canvas is yours to paint.
I would have started with the Jaguars, but we don't know who the quarterback is yet, right? And I don't want to a team. So you want to do the Flacco? Do you want to see what we can do with this? Yeah. Let's see what we can do with the 4-man, the Flacco, Njoku, Cooper, Singletary.
Yes. Just why we're doing this block, just because I saw him actually maybe projecting to be more popular than Amari. Any thoughts on Elijah Moore as well?
He's been pretty dead since Flacco's been involved, and honestly, he's another guy too. What's the apex outcome for Elijah Moore? Where's he priced on DraftKings?
He is priced at 4,200.
All right, so he has dropped a little bit. There was like that stretch there where he was like 47, 52, and you're like, what's the apex game we're getting out of this? I still would rather play Cooper, but because who's going to have this anyways? Who's running Browns doubles?
Well, people who listen to You're in High-Low show and this show.
You're duping us, baby. You're going to dupe us? No one's playing this, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's the key is you throw something up here so gross that even people who really trust what you're saying, that happened. JM had that one week where he was the Desmond Ridder whisperer and he tossed out that double stack. And the people in the comments were apoplectic. Like they did not want anything to do with this. Of course it hit. So here you go. If you don't like this
talk about, and like maybe someone fires in like a $5 single entry or something, like when it's your real money on the line, and are you going to invest hundreds of dollars of playing this Brown stack? They're not going to do it. They're gonna do what they're gonna play Justin Fields, man.
That's right. All right. So where do we go from here? I mean, we're already very unique. We can probably jam some hashtag best plays. We could pull out our double tight end card. Who's your next favorite? I definitely want to get a jet in. We talked about that. And I like that.
Let's do Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
We might be able to get both. We'll see.
What we're doing is actually the rare week 16 tournament team that's also a week 17 game stack with the Jets and Browns. That's what we're playing for here. So we got Garrett Wilson in there.
We can do either Bears D or Jets D, just whatever you like. There's some fun ones. Cowboys could be fun.
I like the idea if Justin Fields and that stuff is going to be overwhelming mega chalk, which I do think we're headed there. Playing the Bears D as a way, like if they get that pick 6 or whatever, and then you really lower that, it's a nice way to crater that chalk.
I like that. All right. Yeah, I like that. Those are kind of the two I've been on. DraftKings been glomming towards. FanDuel, it's different. Those ones are more priced up. Like Jets are the number 1 D on FanDuel.
Yeah.
They're
do you want to do our double punt non-Chandler running back and get our guy Chuba in here?
We could do Chuba at 57. That's going to give us probably access to maybe. I don't know if that's going to give us enough to do like Mike
Jefferson?
Evans plus Engram.
Or yeah. Let's see. If you did Evans. Oh, wait. Might be on the dot, dude. On the
Fuck, dude.
dot.
Holy shit. It built itself.
This one came together clean, almost scarily clean. Just how you drew it up. What do you think about this one? I'll read it for the audio listeners here. Joe Flacco, double stack to Amari Cooper, David Njoku, little Devin Singletary, bring back. Play Garrett Wilson as a one-off. You got Chuba Hubbard in there, and then a little mini correlation between grown-ass man Mike Evans and Evan Engram. You top it off with a leverage defense play in the Bears. Use all the salary, and you win all the monies.
Jesus, I'm sad we did this. I can't play this now. I can't play it.
This is the problem with coming. Every once in a while, we've had one show this year where we built a lineup with JM, and he kind of like stopped in his track because generally, you get the practice build mindset, and he's like, "Shit, I think I want to use that one."
I do. I am not gonna lie to you. I do want to use that, and we can't. So me and Hilo joked about the Flacco thing. Not joked about it, but we talked about how much to have a quartet to not give you 50% of your lineup, like just what you could build around it. And but we didn't finish the lineup. And now, like finishing the lineup, and it got to all the things we talked about. Like, I'm like, damn it.
Well, there's some fun stuff you can do, right? To remix this, right? You can build this with Breece Hall instead of Garrett Wilson. You could build this with Calvin Ridley instead of Evan Engram. There's some of these spots that you generally like that you can kind of mix and match which pieces you want to attack from it.
Yeah, that came together better than I thought it was going to.
There you go. I always preach on this show. I always have to give this caveat because sometimes it goes both ways. Sometimes you don't fiddle with the lineup and you just had the nuts on a Wednesday. We've had that happen with some of our Swolecast lineup. And sometimes you build the absolute most dog shit lineup early in the week because a lot of shit changes. Yeah. So there you go. Make sure that's the caveat. This is a practice build that came together nicely, but lots will change between now and Sunday. Reebs, loved getting to chop up with you. Seriously, everyone give Reebs a round of applause because I got this news from JM on short notice. He had gone to the doctor. They said he can't talk. I'm scrambling here. And the thing is like for this show, could I have found just anyone? Or, I could have probably found someone, but like you are the perfect fit to do this show how I like to do it. So I really appreciate you filling in.
Listen, it's the giving spirit. It's that time of year. How could I say no to someone reaching out for help on Christmas weekend? Like, how could you?
That's right. Yeah, you would have been total. I would have been going around behind it back. I mean, Reebs is such a Scrooge, man. He wouldn't do my show for free on short notice. Who is this asshole?
Also, I'm not going to let this out of the bag, Pete, but I think you might be my good luck charm.
Really? Go on.
I mean, you think back to the Zach Moss stuff. I also came on your show pre-draft when we talked about Puka Nacua and Jaden Reed.
Yes,
we did drag Levis. I think you might just be, because I go on podcasts, give lots of takes, but like I think you might be the good luck charm.
I think you are the good luck charm, and I just help pull it out of you. It's always been deep down within you, Reebs, but when I'm around, you just feel like letting your true self reveal itself. Well, I'm going to hop over right now to the Badge Bros channel. Actually, if you just refresh this feed, it should automatically redirect you over there. Often on the clock, we're going to go through this entire slate from an underdog drafting perspective. So you can come hang out with us for the next hour. We'll also build some pick'em entries and all of that good stuff. Thank you guys for hanging out. I will have my usual set of programming Saturday night. I'm doing DFS After Dark with Gary Hartman from ETR. I will do a Christmas Eve Sunday morning cram show at 10:45 a.m. And then the only other difference will be no portfolio review on Monday. That is Christmas. I'm going to bump it to Tuesday. So we'll do the kind of whole week 16 wrap up on Tuesday. And then I'm going to spin up a second show on Tuesday with Karain. We're going to do some playoff best ball stuff. He's got his new awesome tool over at Legendary Upside. So we're going to rip some drafts, talk through strategy for that. So no shows Monday, but you'll get bang for your buck on Tuesday. If you guys are YouTube members, I'll see you on DFS After Dark in the Cram. Otherwise, have a great Christmas, and we'll see you guys over on the Badge Bros. For Rich,